What is going on, YouTube people? Today, a little discussion about the risks, challenges, the stuff that they don't really tell you about when you want to start investing, air quote investing, speculating, whatever you want to call this thing. It's it should be speculating, but investing sounds better for a YouTube title and thumbnail. But really, what we're doing is speculating on this stuff. This isn't paying you a dividend back. It doesn't have a market cap and all that nonsense. It does not have instant liquidity normally. More about that in a minute. But we're just going to kind of talk about some of the risks associated with this because I know a lot of people are just jumping into this now. And once again, for a little bit of background, I am no Rudy from Alpha Investments. I am not buying case or pallets and warehouses full of this stuff. I would say I am an above average sealed, I'm going to use the term investor, but I buy about a case or so of each release and let it sit, and I've been doing it since late 2022. So, some of the things that they don't necessarily warn you about when you start down this path. Like I said, a lot of people, it's hyped to the moon right now, and everyone wants to run to where the money is. So a lot of people are starting to do this. I've gotten questions about it from friends. Hey, I want to start doing what you're doing with the Pikachus and the Charizards. How do I get started in this? And before you even get into, coming up with whatever your plan is, there's some things I think you should consider. The obvious one is space. Now, out of the gate, it's not that bad. And I didn't have a problem with it. Cool. I bought a case of Brilliant Stars. Cool. I bought a couple loose boxes of Lost Origins Chilling Reign. Great. It sits on the shelf behind me. Sweet. As the years go by, the pile gets bigger and the shelving requirements become more. And then if you keep doing it, then you start getting to the point of, oh, wait a second. I have a decent chunk of money tied up in this. What happens if something happens to the house? Is it secure to still keep these things here? You start going down those paths of questions. But that is definitely one of the things that I don't think a lot of people consider is space. And also the, security, protection, fire, disaster. Like, look what just happened in California. I live in Ohio. I don't have fires to worry about, but tornadoes are definitely a thing here. You start thinking about those sorts of things. So then it's like, if you get to so much, are you getting a secured storage unit, a temperature controlled storage unit? And then if you do that, then that is an added expense if you end up really getting serious in this stuff. But even if you stay semi-casual, maybe you buy 1 or 2 booster boxes of every release or a couple ETBs of each release. At first, that feels like nothing, but eventually that does add up. So you better have a plan for that. It starts as a closet, maybe a shelf in the closet, and the next thing you know, it's the whole closet, and the next thing you know, it's spilling out into that room, and then you have multiple shelving setups, and a lot of people don't have room for all that stuff. Myself, personally, I mix it up a little bit on where I store stuff, and I also have a separate insurance policy on collectibles. I do not go through my homeowners. I use Collect Insure, which a lot of people do. Hashtag not sponsored. They've been fine for me, but I've never had to submit a claim. So fingers crossed that I never have to submit a claim, but I don't know how much fight / pushback they would give on a claim submission. So I will put that caveat in there. But generally speaking, they have been very easy to work with over the years. I've used them for 3 or 4 years now for my sealed stuff, my comic book collection, and also my individual card collection. I have that all wrapped in. I have 2 separate policies with Collect Insure that I've been running with for, I think, 3+, maybe 4+ years now. So that is definitely one. The second part, and it kind of goes hand in hand. At some point in time, you are going to want to sell this stuff. And this stuff's not easy to ship. A booster box is fine. When you start getting into some of the collection boxes and things like that, like Blooming Waters, for example, that box is massive. It's a pain to ship. Now, in some cases, you might be able to break those things down and just sell off the packs and not actually sell off the whole box. Right now, you could do that no problem. If the market cools, people might want the sealed collection box. I generally avoid buying that sort of stuff. That's probably a whole separate video on, like, investing for beginners or whatever, or sealed speculating for beginners. I generally steer away from those sorts of products from a storage standpoint, and the fact that I know I will eventually have to ship them in some shape or form. Now, I do have some of that stuff, not a ton of it. I'll only buy it if it is a really good deal. Like Walmart had, I think it was called Legendary Warriors or something. You got like a dozen packs of Sword and Shield era sets, like late Sword and Shield era sets, for, it was like $40 or whatever. It was a pretty good deal. And I ended up buying like 10 of them, which was shipped in 2 separate boxes, and they are massive. Sea and Sky boxes, I ended up snagging 2 of those. I was a little late to the party on those. Those are massive. They sell for good money, but they are massive. So that's something to keep in mind from the storage standpoint. And also, the goal here is, remember, the goal here is not just to pack or stack up boxes with stop tape on it. At some point in time, you are going to sell. And let's kind of move into one of the other like risks / things to keep in mind. Right now, the market is red hot. If you are just coming in right now, you're like, this is fantastic. It is rainbows and kittens and puppies. Everything is great. My portfolio, my green lines go up 10, 20, 30% every week. This is fantastic. This is one of the best things in the world. Why do people ever think about buying Amazon stock? Just give me some Pikachus. Well, normally that is not how it works. Typically, and one of the other risks / things to consider, when you're buying this stuff or speculating on it, you are letting your money sit for a while. In most cases, if you're actually looking to make a good percentage return, under normal circumstances, you could be sitting on product for years. Sometimes 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, depending on what type of return you're looking to get on it. Generally speaking, up until now, Pokemon has remained undefeated. It always creeps up. Now, it has not really done what it's done in the last 2 months, where it went absolutely nuclear on the sealed side of things, and some parameters have changed the market a little bit with hype sets, rip and shippers. That could be a whole other video on itself as well. But when you're buying this stuff, generally speaking, you're probably going to be letting it sit for a while. If you're coming in now buying at a Paldea Evolved at $200 a box, which is what it's at right now, you to get a decent return on that, you're probably going to have to sit on it for a couple of years till it goes out of print, flushes through the system, and then starts going up. So keep that in mind. You shouldn't be buying this stuff if you think you're going to quick flip it. Now, right now, you might be able to pull off the quick flips, but that is not how this normally works. Normally, you're parking the money and the product, taking up the space, taking up the fact that you could have spent that money on something else, and letting it marinate. So something else to keep in mind. And then, like I said, when you actually go to sell this stuff, you need a buyer. Right now, selling is easy. Selling right now is the easiest it may ever be, or at least in the short term. We may never see this again in our lifetimes, or it could be a decade before, maybe 5 years before we see something like this, at least in the short term. And what do I mean by short term? That could be the next month to year and a half. In theory, the talking heads, myself and others, seem to think that this could run for about a year plus. We have a couple banger sets coming out in a row, and then it leads right into the 30th anniversary of Pokemon. So the market could stay hot all the way through that 30th anniversary, but then maybe it cools off for 3 or 4 years. There has been boxes that I bought that I've been sitting on for years that had little to no movement until just recently. They were up slightly. I probably could have covered my costs. Like if I needed to sell them, I probably would have broke even or made a very slight profit on them when you factor in selling fees and shipping. But up until the last month or two when they went nuclear, I was doing just fine on some things. Some stuff I had done quite well on. I doubled up even before the market got super hot. But this has kind of leveled everything up. But the liquidity right now is insane. You could go out and sell right now. I could reach out to probably some rip and shippers, some shops, some collectors, investors, whatever, and say, hey, I have, let's just call it $5,000 in street value Pokemon sealed, like on the open market, on eBay, on TCG Player. This pile of stuff would go for $5,000. In the current market, I have the power. I could say, I'll give you a slight discount. We'll do, let's say 4,700, maybe even 4,500. I'll knock 10% off because I'm going to lose 13% if I sell on eBay or TCG Player or whatever other selling platform. I'm going to lose a little bit of percentage. And maybe the market's so hot right now, I could say even stronger than that. Maybe I could say 4,800. The way things are right now, someone is going to jump at that. They're going to be like, yep, right now. Cool. When can I pick it up? Can I get it tomorrow? Can I get it yesterday? I'm on the way. I haven't even hung up the phone yet, and I am on my way to you to pick that stuff up because they either have a buyer for it, they're either FOMO'd and just want the product to stash away, maybe they're a rip and shipper, maybe it's a combination of all three things. But right now is one of the easiest times you are ever going to find to sell product. If the market cools, that becomes a whole different story. Now, say we are a year ago and I try to move $5,000 in a large lot like that of maybe mixed product, like decent stuff, let's say booster boxes from the last handful of years, and I reach out to those same people in a not super hot market like it is now, they might say, I'll give you $4,000. Take it or leave it. And it might even be less than that if I want to sell it all off in one shot. Now I could put the work in and list it on eBay, list it on TCG Player. But if the market is not super hot and liquid, it might take longer for those things to sell. That is one of the other downsides of investing in any collectible versus a stock or 401k. You do not have instant liquidity. I cannot just go sell this stuff like I can a piece of Amazon stock. You can't do it. I mean, I guess you could if you just absolutely listed it at a bargain basement price, but even that has risks associated with it. You have to potentially ship it and hope that it gets there with no problems. You have to hope nobody pulls some shenanigans on you and charges back or do some other sort of nonsense through various selling platform loopholes to take advantage of you, an honest seller just trying to sell their product. That's why a lot of the times people will reach out to folks and try to do larger deals. But at that point in time, in a non-hot market, they have the leverage. So they could say, cool, you want to sell to me? No questions asked. Here's cash on your $5,000 stack of product. I'll give you $3,800. Take it or leave it. And the market might be on the downside. It might be cool. It might not be as easy to liquidate. And in a lot of cases, what usually happens in those situations, because I've seen this in cards and comics, is the person gets mad and upset and says, screw you, you're trying to rip me off. And then they go around to a bunch of other places, hear basically the same offers. Then they go to try to sell it on their own, realize what a pain in the ass it is. And then they end up circling back to the original person and was like, you know what, you were actually pretty fair. If that deal's still on the table, let's do it. Is a lot of times how those situations end up. I've seen it happen before in some other collectible categories. But I'm not trying to scare you off from doing this. It is fun. It has been fun to do this over the last few years. Obviously, the windfalls are right now when everything is super hot. But it's not, like I said at the beginning, it is not all sunshine and rainbows. There are some dark days, and there will be dark days ahead. You just can't see them right now because everyone is super happy and excited and FOMOing and everything's great. But there is a downside to that, and keep that in mind before you start spending hundreds and thousands of dollars on booster boxes, ETBs, crazy collections, especially right now, because I do feel like people are making poor purchase decisions just for the sake of buying. They want to be in it, so they're buying just to buy, and they either might not be buying the right products or they might be paying a very high price that you might be safe on if you hold long enough. Like if you're paying X amount of dollars for a super inflated booster box, let's say Fusion Strike, I think they're like $500 right now. I don't remember off the top of my head. I haven't looked for a hot minute. And maybe the market pulls back slightly and they drop to $450, $400, and it might sit there for a while, or maybe it even just stays at $500 for the next 2-3 years. That could happen. And then what? You didn't make any money on that. And if you went to sell, you're actually losing money. If you're willing to hold long enough, at some point in time, I do believe in the Pokemon market enough that it will eventually go up. But at what cost? You know, you had your money tied up in it. You had to lug it around from house to house. You had to store it. You had to make sure it was safe. There's just a lot of other ancillary nonsense to this. It's not as easy as go buy a booster box for $80, sit on it like an egg, and then watch it hatch into a $200 booster box. It can work like that, but there's a lot in between those two things. So that's all I wanted to talk about today, is some of the risks, downsides, and there's plenty of others. I'm sure if you think of anything that is prominent to mind for you all that have been doing this for a while, feel free to sound off in the comments down below. With that, catch boys and girls on the next one. Peace.